the trend has been, as the year has gone on, that Zach Wilson has moved ahead of Justin because people think that he has maybe more of the intangible competitive characteristics, instinctive characteristics that maybe Justin just hasn't developed yet, especially, when it comes to the finer points of the game where you really, you just need that little bit of extra whatever the hell it is in order to make a play to help your team win. But I think that Justin may have closed the gap on that just simply based off of how he played against Clemson. So let's just say he goes out against Alabama on Monday and he throws, and it's not out of the realm of possibility for him to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and rush for another one. I mean, we've seen other quarterbacks give Alabama's defense is not the Alabama defense old. So he could light it up, and it could become, between him and Mac Jones, it could become one of those back and forths. So let's just assume if he does that, it's going to make people go back and really say, okay, what can we attribute some of his inconsistency in the year, which there are some. You look at the Big Ten championship game, his thumb's banged up and Olave's not playing. He gets into a rut. Ryan Day says, well, guess what? They can't stop us running the football, so we'll just run the ball down their throat. And that's what they did. So I think there's going to be a lot of study that's going to have to be done on everybody this year in particular for the obvious reasons of the pandemic, but for the quarterbacks also underneath Trevor because of how everybody's season has kind of stopped and started. BYU stopped and started. They substitute opponents there at the end of the season. There's just a lot of things to consider. This is the hardest year for scouts and front offices probably in the history of the NFL. There's just no doubt about it. Because the information is so scattered and it's not uniform. So you're going to have to apply different context to every team. And that's hard. That's really hard. Which, you know what, really brings you back to this. You have to know you better than you even will ever know the players this year. You have to know what you're able to bring to the table for them, even more so than what they are bringing to you. So the strongest programs, as always, are going to be the best ones. But that's what's going to really make the difference, I believe, in this year's draft class.
You remember when Colbert, he had a comment, I think, beginning of the season about he would feel more confident about guys that had played the previous year that opted out. Yep. But I think it also probably rings true because you bring up a good point. If I'm watching Justin Fields, if I'm on your scouting staff and we're sitting down there as a group and we flip on Justin Fields week 4 against whoever, he might not have practiced all week. Or just whoever the guy is, right? They've been virtual. Yeah. How do you even – it's going to be really hard to judge a guy off a game like you normally would, right? And is this year going to be the most misses and / hits on random guys that probably in a long time? The quarterback's probably unique, but just the rest of the group?
Yeah, it's a year that gives you more risk. There's more risk that you can't minimize because – than you've ever been able to, than you've ever had to minimize in years prior, because there's just every person's situation from team to team is just going to be different. And so you know what, you're going to have to, just like in scouting, right? And in a normal situation, when you're looking at free agents, since that's what you primarily did, right? When you're in-house and you're looking at free agents, you have to look at a player's playing history and look at what his status was in each game as far as, is he dealing with an injury? Had he just come back from an injury? What kind of injury was it? Was it lower body? Was it upper body? Especially because you know how that can affect performance. I remember this when I was in Washington and we were looking at linebackers. And it was the year we signed Marcus Washington, I believe, to a big free agent contract from the Indianapolis Colts. And Seattle had a guy named Anthony Simmons from Clemson, an inside backer, who is this ridiculously explosive athlete. He reminds you of Bobby Wagner, ran about 4'4", had like a 38-inch vertical, all this stuff. Well, our linebacker coach looked at him in a game where he had just come off a high ankle sprain.
So he looks slow.
We come into the meeting, and people were talking about Anthony Simmons. My God, he's just kind of athlete. Look, I had these plays where he does this and that. And our linebacker coach is sitting there and his face is getting all contorted. He's just like, what film were you guys watching? This guy sucks. He can't run. He has no explosion. I'm going, what? I go, what games did you look at? He's like, weeks 11, 12, 13, Cincinnati, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, he had just come off a high ankle sprain. He hadn't played in like a month. You could see him out on the field limping around. He had never looked at that, though. He had never checked that. So if you just take that snapshot, you're going to value him one way. So if you apply that to now, I mean, if you have a kid who hadn't practiced and played a game in 3 weeks and hadn't been able to get on the football field with his teammates and was only practicing virtually, you got to know that stuff.
I know.
Because if you don't, I mean, just think of how the grades could totally alter based off of that alone.
It's going to be hard to keep track of all that stuff this year.
Exactly. But, I mean, you're going to have to because that's your job. I know. Right? I mean, so you're right. This year, there's going to be some guys spending a lot of time tracking down how much practice the game. It's tougher than any year you've ever faced in the NFL, easily.